Hi everyone, I'm Gregg Standridge. Uh, I'm the head of guitar studies at Norman Music Institute here in Norman, Oklahoma. And we're going to do a lesson today on CAGED system. And this is going to tie into another lesson that we're going to do later on about arpeggios. So the CAGED system is just a way to map the different shapes on the neck to create the same chord. If you play piano, it's kind of like making arpeggios across the keyboard through the octave. And this will help any guitar player that really is, struggling to see what the other possible chords are. We kind of learn at first that you learn a C chord, and that's the C chord, but there are lots of C chords all the way across the neck. So this is going to help you find any chord across the neck. In fact, a lot of people like to think of it this way, that any chord voicing that you can make on the guitar can be based off of the CAGED system. And that's really true, to me anyways. I mean, you can get some really wild ones that are stretched out by using two hands, but still there are pieces of this map. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. There's three stages to this. The first one is just building a C chord across the neck. Now the an acronym CAGED stands for the 5 common basic chord shapes that you already know. C, A, G, E, and D. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play the C chord in first position. Just like that. Now technically speaking, this open E string is part of the C chord. It's the third tone of the chord. Now when you're learning your basic lessons, you learn usually not to play that string, but in actuality it works in there. The next thing we do to add the next chord is C, A. We have to work with the A shape. Here's how we do that. Whatever chord we're working with at this point, we've been working with the C chord. So we're going to go to the highest fret in that chord. That would be this fret, the 3rd fret. And we're going to make a bar there. And then we're going to act like that bar is 0, or the nut. And we're going to make an A shape. So there is the little A shape we've made. And those are all notes of the C chord. Once again, you may learn that A shape like this, where you play from the root down. That's okay. But this note now is the 5th of the C chord. C, A, G. Here's our C chord again. Went up to the 3rd fret, made a bar, and played the A shape. And now this is the one that is very difficult to play, but don't worry about the huge stretch you have to make at this right now. We really just learned to take pieces of these shapes and make these chords. So even though here is the highest fret, I'm using the 5th fret from my A chord, I play a bar there on the 5th fret, and I stretch up and make a G chord like this. People try and do it like this, but you got to really stretch out. That is another C chord. Usually at this point, everybody's like, I don't like the CAGED system. That's too hard. We don't use all of that. I never play this chord in context. It's just in demonstration to show you what all is available. For instance, Hendrix loved to play this chord, but he would just take this note and these 2 notes or 3 notes out of the bar here. So it would sound like, I know you've heard those sort of Hendrix licks before. Or you can just take these notes and chime that sound over someone that's doing it regularly. This is a C chord. this came from this big, massive G shape here. So it's good to practice the shape and look at it, and we'll practice them later on as an arpeggio, but for now, don't be afeared of the big, ugly G-shaped C chord. It's okay. All right, so we've built the C. We've moved up to the highest fret, and we've made the A. A shape. This is really a C chord. And then we've moved up from the A shape and made our bar on the 5th fret and made the G shape. The G shape is easier for me than the A shape. I tell you, it's crazy. Okay, so now we're only 2 chords away. Here's our highest fret. The 5th fret is the highest fret. We're going to go ahead and make our bar there, and this is going to be a pretty easy shape for most of us that have made bar chords before. It's just the E shape. And there's another C chord. Once again, you don't have to play the whole thing. Going back to Hendrix again, he would take this little shape like this and add notes off of the scale into that. So you get this big, full sounding C chord that you can fill behind folks whenever they're playing. You can make these different voicings of your C chord across the neck. Okay, so we're at the C chord, or the E shape rather. Go ahead, I'm going to start from the top again. Here's the C chord. 3rd fret is the highest fret, so I make a bar. I make the A shape. 5th fret is the highest set of notes in the chord, so I'll go ahead and make a bar there at the 5th fret and make the G shape. C, A, G. Here's the highest fret. 8th fret, make a bar. There's the E shape. All right, and here is another tough shape. It's the D shape. Here's the highest fret. It happens to be on the 10th fret right now. I make my bar. And there is my D shape out there. It's kind of a tough stretch. Now, there's a little note about this chord. So far, we've been able to use the bass string on every one of these chords. But in this case, this is the lowest note of the chord. Now, whenever we start doing the arpeggios, we'll actually be able to pick up this note, which is the 3rd. It's an E note. But it's a little tough to play all at the same time, unless you cheat like that. All right, so this is a C chord, and once again, if I just cut it down to just a little D shape up here, get all those cool little sounds from that C shape. Now the CAGED system is a loop. So what happens next is this. After we get to the D shape, we start over again at the C shape. It's kind of interesting to see how this little D shape plugs into the C chord shape. And this is where it breaks the rule. Normally we're going to go to the highest fret here, which would be right here, and we would make our bar there. But when you start over, this is the exception to the rule. You want to go to these 2 notes here and make your bar. They're both on the 10th fret, or 12th fret rather, and you're going to make your bar there. And now that point right here of your C chord, or of your D chord, becomes the tail note of your C chord. So there's your C chord like that. Once again, these are kind of big stretches here, but that's the C chord there. So here's a D shape, C chord, with the full extension back behind it. And here's the full C chord at the 12th fret. So I'm going to play all those in sequence. First position C chord. On the 3rd fret you make your bar, make your A shape. On the 5th fret you make a bar, make your G shape. On the 8th fret you make a bar, make the E shape. This is the 10th fret where we'll make our bar and we'll make our D shape. We exclude this string unless you want to go and do the little trick in there. This is again where we break the rule. We don't go to the highest fret, we go to the next highest fret, which is where the 2 fingers are together on the 12th fret. We make a bar and we go back and make our original C chord. Now, what's after C? Well, it's A, and we could go to the A again and make that. It's really difficult for me to get my big dumb fingers in there, but you can make a little bar chord with a splay like that. Here's part of a G chord. There's the full shape, but so if you had 2,789 frets on your guitar, you could make all of the C chords all the way across the neck through all the fret settings. So what about the other chords? Well, the other chords can be made from these same 5 shapes. I'm going to use the A shape as an example. So I have an A chord here. All right. I'm going to tell you right now, I cheat and make my A chord with 2 fingers splayed over 3 strings, so as not to confuse anybody. Like that, however you make your A chord. But I'm just playing this, this, and this on 3 strings, and that's my A chord. Now, if I follow the rules of the CAGED system, I just make a bar on the highest fret, which happens to be right here on the 2nd fret. And then I say, well, I'm on an A chord, so C, A, G is the next shape. Make my bar on the 2nd fret and make my G chord shape there. All right, so that's another A chord again. Break it down, make pieces of it, whatever you like. Here's the highest fret, now the 5th fret. To make my next A chord, I'm going to follow the CAGED system, C, A, G, E shape. Makes my next A chord. These are all A chords I'm making now, whereas before I was making all C chords. Now, the next thing would be the D shape. So here's my highest fret. Go ahead and make that D shape in there. If you'd like the 3rd in there. And now we have the start over point. Remember, when you start over from the D shape to the C shape, doesn't matter what chord you're building, you don't go to the pinky as your bar. You go to where the 2 notes together are. Those 2 notes together are part of the bar for the next shape, which is C. And it's really good to see how that tail of the C chord attaches right to the point of the D chord. There's the point of the D chord. Like that. From there you can go ahead and go on. A shape again, G shape again, E shape again if I can get in there. Sort of not. As far up as you want to go. But you can make cut pieces. In other words, just little shapes. Like that. So that's the 2nd stage. You can make any chord like that. C, A, G, E, or D. All right, the 3rd stage of this is, it's a really valid question, of course, but everybody goes, what about those other chords that don't fit C, A, G, E, or D? And one of the most common ones we think of is F. F does not appear to be in the CAGED system. But if you really look at F closely, you can see that really it is. F is really just a piece of the E shape. If I play the bottom 4, the first 4 strings rather of the bar chord F, it's the same 4 notes as my regular, what most people learn is their first F chord. So if you want to make an F and move it up, just think of it as being an E shape. Make the bar up, go to the D, make the bar up with the little trick on the C, Make the little bar for the A. That's right. Paint you some happy little F chords in there. All right, so you can make any chord like that. As you go through and study the CAGED system, it's really, really important to understand what the chord tones are in the chords you're playing. There's only 5 of them to memorize. And if you're reading through my books in Lesson 47 CAGED system, it does go through and list everything through there for you so you can begin to memorize. But in the case of the C here, it's the 3rd, the root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. So it's just the root, 3rd, and 5th. It's everything in this is a C, E, or a G, a root, 3rd, or a 5th. And that's the same thing with the next chord here. The E shape, or the A shape rather, is 5th, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. It'd been great if they, didn't skip, like, here we have a 5th, then a root, and then we have a 5th again. When we learn them as arpeggios, we change up and actually add that note in to make those all root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, as an arpeggio should be. Here's the G. It's root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, root. The E, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Here's the D shape now. This is the 3rd. It's the little trick one that I talked about earlier where you have to do it like that. 3rd, 5th, root, 5th, root, 3rd. And so when you start over with the C shape, it's the same thing it was when you were in first position. This is 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd. By knowing the roots, 3rds, and 5ths throughout your chords, then you can start adding your extensions to them. And what I mean by extensions are 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, sus4, alterations like that you would need to add. For instance, if I know that this chord that I just made up here with the C, if I know that this is the 5th, the root, and the 3rd, well, I can make a sus4 by just making that note move up a fret to the 4. This is a 3rd, that has to be the 4. If I need to do a sus2, I can see that that's a 3rd, so I can move that note back and make a sus2. So understanding where the notes are super important when you're doing the CAGED system, knowing the chord tones rather. Okay, that's all I have for y'all today. I hope it's been helpful. A little CAGED system lesson there, just kind of a basic one to get you started with CAGED system. My name is Gregg Standridge. I'm the Director of Guitar Studies at Norman Music Institute, and appreciate you guys having a listen. If you need lessons on just about any instrument, Norman Music Center here in Norman, Oklahoma, it's a great place. I've worked there and taught there for several years now. It's a wonderful establishment. People really care about what's going on up there, so I really appreciate that. All right, you guys have a good day.